Well, good morning, everybody. We'll get started right away here, and we're just going to kick off our first week here back at the Capitol, our first session days, and our first committees getting things rolling. We're looking into week 2. We had a very good week in the House. We had several reform initiatives introduced and moving through the committee process. We've got Reform 2.0 well underway. We've had 7 committee hearings. We've got folks that are working very hard to get those things to the floor as soon as possible. We also, from a scheduling standpoint, you might have picked up that we're going to be breaking next week for precinct caucuses. So we will be off from Thursday, or excuse me, we'll be in session on Wednesday, concluding session, and then we will be off until the 7th at noon. So that'll be our first break for precinct caucuses. We'll be back the day after caucuses, back in action, but we will have both committees and session next week for that. We have several reform bills, referendum following the students moving through. We've got a very good teacher candidate required to pass a basic skills test that has gotten some attention as it's been moving through. Other hot topics, we've got child care unionization bill. Representative Lomer has taken that. That's a bill that prohibits union dues to be taken from state child care subsidies when passed through. So that's been working through, and we had a very good first week back. It was good to see everybody back in action, and great to see all of you here today.
Well, good morning. It's nice to be here this morning, and I'm pleased to say that this is the first time I've been able to address the press to say that we have almost $1 billion surplus in the state of Minnesota. I think that's the big news today. We started out last year with a deficit of almost $6 billion, and now the legislators return to the state Senate and the Minnesota House, and we see a almost $1 billion surplus. We've made some great strides in economic recovery, but there's more work to be done, and we are working on developing bills, beginning hearings on our jobs plan, and there are some great pieces of legislation underway. Our committees are back at work, and we're going to dig in hard to see what we can do to make things better for Minnesotans and for businesses that need to thrive here in Minnesota. Senator Newman introduced our constitutional amendment on voter ID. I think that's going to have a pretty good response in the Minnesota Senate, hopefully in the House. That would be a constitutional amendment that would require folks to provide an identification before voting. I think there are a lot of Minnesotans that support that. This next week in the Senate, we're going to break after business on Thursday. We'll be back, or we'll be on break next Monday and Tuesday for precinct caucuses. We also reconvene on Wednesday the 7th at noon. This coming week, we're going to have some commissioner confirmations up. There are 4 for tomorrow. We have Commissioners Anderson, Sorrell, Doman, and Landwehr up tomorrow. So, or excuse me, Monday. It's going to be a big week, and happy to be here. We also passed our budget for the through the Rules Committee this week, and I'm happy to address that if you have any questions. So, good to be here. Thank you.
Questions?
Child care unionization, when does that come up next week?
Oh, we have, it passed out of its first, it passed out of the Commerce Committee, and it will be heard in HHS, I believe that's Tuesday. Tuesday.
Senator, do you expect any of these confirmations to be rocky and anyone to be rejected?
Well, thanks for the question. We know that Senator Anderson did not fare particularly well in committee. She's known to be a very passionate advocate and has a tough record to defend, and so could be controversial on the floor on Monday.
Is her confirmation going down?
Well, I think that remains to be seen. I don't know what the vote will be, but as I said, indicators from committee are that she didn't fare well, and it's likely that she will not get confirmed.
Why not? What are her problems?
As I said, very passionate advocate on issues, but she's got an extreme record to defend and was not successful in defending it in committee, and so the committee is going to make a recommendation and it will be heard on the Senate floor.
By extreme you mean what?
Not in line with most Minnesotans' views. I would say that she's got a tough record for job providers, job creators, the ratepayers. Her work has created some controversy. And it makes it very difficult to confirm a commissioner that is as controversial as she has been.
So it's about her past record, not about what she's done as on the job so far.
Well, I'd say it's both, but I will leave any further questions about that to Chair Rosen. She's done a really good job. Her committee has all the facts and the details, the background for that. So I encourage you to talk with Chair Julie Rosen. She's done a good job of reviewing the commissioner's work, her record, and what the basis of confirmation should be.
Have they made a recommendation, committee?
You know, I don't know what their recommendation is, so I don't want to answer that. But as I said, Chair Rosen can answer more specifics about the status of Commissioner Anderson and her background.
Why stay silent for a year and then bring it up now?
Well, I, again, would defer to Chair Rosen.
How about that stadium?
Well, the Viking Stadium, I think I get asked that maybe 12 times a day, maybe 15 times a day. How about you, Matt? 15, 20 times a day. I think it's, we've gotten to the place where it's time for the Vikings and the advocates for the Vikings to climb the mountain. They've been going around the mountain and around the mountain and around the mountain. But it's time for them to put the package together and start developing support in our caucuses, in all 4 caucuses, and build their support if they're going to get it done this year. The time is running, and they've got some work to do.
Could you both say how important you think it is that there be a stadium vote this year, how important or not important it can be?
Sure. Our caucus's priorities are what the freshmen's priorities are when they ran for election. What swept them into office was a reform agenda. When they got here, they had a $5.5 billion budget deficit. And they really now look at this as an opportunity to change government. They feel that this is why they were elected. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for government reform. That's our first priority. That's their first priority, and that's really what we think. The folks who say, well, shouldn't we just have an up or down vote on the stadium? I mean, why don't we just have an up or down vote? And what I say to that is that even if it goes up or down, yes or no, well, that's not always a good idea. Sometimes it's a really bad idea to have a vote for a vote's sake just because folks are frustrated. If that means that the stadium goes down and that the team is sold out from under us, like the North Stars were sold out from under us when I was a kid, that's a bad idea. We want to make sure that the team stays here. It's part of our heritage. It's a 50-year heritage. That's true. We also have a 150-year heritage of not being chumps and being very frugal and being very prudent. And so we don't want to rush into this, and we're not boxing ourselves in or painting ourselves into a corner.
Sounds like you're not pressured into doing it this year.
Well, I think that the process is going to work its way through, but our priority that we've communicated time and time again to Governor Dayton is reform. I know Governor Dayton is very, very interested in the stadium. I know that he's talked with the leadership and the ownership of the Vikings a lot. I wish that he was at the Newspaper Association this morning with Sheck and the, who's the guy from, what town was that from? Benson, Minnesota. Case needs 100 people to hire in rural Minnesota. Greater Minnesota needs jobs. We need to be talking to CEOs and company owners all around the state because we got a jobs issue. So that should be at least as important as meeting with the Vikings. So we would like to see the governor get out and travel the state and talk to other owners of businesses. U-Line just moved from Eagan to Hudson. We lost a lot of really good jobs to an adjoining state. Would have liked the governor to be more involved with that. So I think he needs to be competing for all jobs in the state of Minnesota, not just for Vikings.
Now, is the second round of environmental permitting legislation going to see the light of day next week?
Yes. On Tuesday, Senator Bill Ingebrigtsen will introduce or bring that information or that bill to his committee on economic and regulatory climate. He's got some ideas about those types of reforms to reform the permitting process, and you'll hear that in his committee Tuesday.
Madam Chair, how would you assess the chances of the voter ID constitutional amendment in your chamber? And then the same question of the majority leader in terms of his chamber's receptivity to it. Caucuses.
I would say very receptive. It's got a great chance of passing the Senate because we already passed the bill. So it was passed statutorily. Unfortunately, the governor vetoed it, and I think there's strong support. That's why it's being brought back as a constitutional amendment.
There was some talk on some lawmakers' parts about possibly trying to broker some sort of an agreement with the governor such that it would be legislation rather than a constitutional amendment. Is there any viability to that as far as you see? Or
I'm not aware of that, Bill. I am not aware.
Why should Governor Dayton be different from Governor Pawlenty, who said he wouldn't sign a bill that does not have broad bipartisan support on elections bill like this?
Well, I
Are you
think
holding him to a different standard is what I'm asking.
Well, I think that if you look at the state of Minnesota, and the Star Tribune has polled this, I think several times, that 70 to 80% of Minnesotans think that you should be required to show a photo ID to vote. It certainly has broad support in the public. We tried to pass that bill. We successfully passed it out of both the House and the Senate. The governor chose not to sign that for whatever reason, and we think that that was a bill that he should have signed. We believe that the House and Senate came together with a bill that was very signable that most Minnesotans agree with.
How many Democrats supported that bill?
I will have to check on
Very few, I think. Two?
two. On the bipartisan support. Why it wasn't broad bipartisan support, I don't know. It's sometimes votes come up and they fall down along party lines and you kind of scratch your head. On both sides of the aisle, understand that. But it is a bill that I think most people want to have a confidence in the outcome of elections, and they want elections matter. Minnesota, they always seem to be close. So I think it has broad bipartisan support. It's probably something that fits within the Constitution, and that if Representative Kiffmeyer is moving with this bill in the House, and she continues to get good support.
Well, Mr. Leader, are you holding Governor Dayton to a different standard that you held Governor Pawlenty to on this?
I don't believe...
Just because the public might support it.
I don't believe so. I think that that Governor Dayton might say this is an elections bill, and elections bills have to have a certain requirement that's different from other kinds of bills. The average person on the street says, this is a pretty simple idea. Do you need to show a photo ID in order to vote, yes or no? It's not a complicated elections bill. It's a pretty straightforward bill.
But Leader Dean, the voters' polls did not ask people whether they wanted provisional ballots, whether they wanted to change same-day registration. All those are elements of what you want to do. And so it's a little more complicated than a straightforward voter ID bill, isn't it?
I don't think so. I think at the heart of it, it's are you who you say you are when you go to vote? And this is the easiest way that many other states have done, and to provide some assurance that people are who they say they are when they go to vote.
Well, I've got you on constitutional amendments. Do you foresee any others? Already the marriage amendment is on, and this one, let's assume it's going on. How many more, and which ones do you think?
Well, our members have been very disciplined about not introducing constitutional amendments. I know as we started out the session last year, we heard every single day from the Democrats on the other side of the aisle about how we were introducing constitutional amendments, and Representative Winkler would get up very often and talk about that. And we said we were going to deal with the budget first. We did. We added one constitutional amendment last year, the marriage amendment. That is on. That will be on the ballot. And where we go forward, we're going to be very prudent and judicious about doing that. We don't want to add any more onto the ballot than we think is prudent. We don't want to endanger one by having another on the ballot. We think that they should stand on their own. And so our members have been very, very disciplined and prudent in shown restraint in not having many introduced. And they take this very seriously about changing the Constitution, and will continue to do so as we go through the process.
Right to work.
Right to work is one of many that's gotten a lot of attention from folks around the country. That's one that's has been that's probably not as far along as others. It's certainly very contentious and very controversial. So it's one that I'm sure that we will be hearing more about as we move down the road.
Going to have that on the, is that going to be a constitutional amendment that you folks will debate and vote on, either one of you?
Well, I think there's interest in the caucus by several members. They had a press conference, I believe, this week, and Senator Thompson and Representative Drzkowski. And so that will move through the process just like the others.
Senator Ortman, at the microphone, is there any hint here that the resistance to Ellen Anderson is payback for Carol Molnow or for Sherry Pearson-Yecke for what happened to them?
None.
Could you elaborate at all? I mean, this is based solely on the merits of Senator Anderson.
Exactly.
So from your, I know you said go to speak to Senator Rosen, but from your perspective, are you going to vote for her confirmation? And if not, why not?
Well, Tom, I do not sit on that committee. I wasn't present during the conversations about it, and so I'll be learning from my caucus members.
So you haven't discussed this yet, or you're still not sure how you're going to vote?
As I said, I'll be learning from my caucus members, but I, at this point, defer to Chair Rosen.
Can I go back to the constitutional amendments very quickly? Governor Dayton this week said that he's concerned that the Republican caucus in both the House and Senate are moving toward legislating by constitutional amendment. I'm sure you don't think that's fair, but would you address that a little bit?
Well, I would say that Leader Dean said it very well, that the members here are cautious. The Constitution has served us well for 150 years. We want to make sure that if we bring a ballot question forward, it's because there's some change that needs to get made that will serve us for another 150 years. So I think people are being very cautious and careful before we go forward with this. There are certainly conversations going on about whether the Constitution needs to be changed. That there are probably 37 different views in my caucus about whether or not there should be another constitutional amendment ballot question.
Well, will you guarantee that there won't be? Can you say that now, that there will be no others, even though these are moving through the session?
No. No, I wouldn't say that. It is very possible that there could be another one. That's the work of this legislative session. I think that there are proposals out there, including the voter ID and others, and so we'll be having those conversations. We'll be having conversations in committee.
Chair David's levy limits bill for property taxes is going to be up next week as well. Leader Dean, I wonder if you could discuss that. Obviously, Democrats have made an issue of property taxes, and Chair Ortman, as taxes chair, would want to get your take on the proposal as well.
Sure. Just first to go back to talk about the constitutional amendments and authority, our members are very concerned that we are very judicious about this, as I said, but we're also very concerned about the governor exceeding his authority through rulemaking. So we are going to be looking very, very hard at the governor going around the legislative process through rulemaking through the agencies, which I think is a greater threat to small business in the state of Minnesota and jobs. And so we are going to be focusing next week, in fact, on that. So you might want to just keep an eye peeled for that as well.
What will you focus on?
Well, we have several bills that get at limiting the ability of agencies to essentially take legislative prerogative. Some of those bills would require a legislative vote. Some of them sunset rules. But the bottom line is we used to pass this many laws and this many rules. Now we pass this many laws and this many rules. And so we really have some difficulties for job creators that we have heard from, particularly in the interim, that we want to get at. So I'm glad the governor is interested in controlling authority.
Do you have the ability to rescind governor's rules? I'm sorry to interrupt on that. Do you have the ability to rescind governor's rules? And will you be doing that?
We have the ability to put controls over the interpretation and how those are brought out. We also can require that they be approved or sunsetted. So we're looking at how we can put some controls on that.
Sorry to interrupt on that.
Sorry.
On the levy.
Yeah, I didn't want to forget that. I'm playing hurt today, so I'm about 75%. Yeah, the caps. Chair Davids is introducing that. We'll be moving forward on that. The tax chair. That is something that when we look at cities and counties in particular, we are very concerned about property tax increases. The folks on the other side of the aisle will say that the market value homestead credit, which is an $89 million program, supplemented by $30 million of property tax relief directly to homeowners, is the cause for these hundreds of millions of dollars in tax increases across the state. So it's been described as an $89 million tail wagging a $400 million dog. And so I think that the chair is right to look very carefully at that and to look at controls at the local level.
Any word from Ramsey County today about the Arden Hills site that you've heard?
I haven't.
No, don't know.
Any, Senator, have you had a chance to look at the bonding proposal in regard to the Shakopee Women's Prison and the need of defense around it?
I'm sorry, Jay, I have not seen that proposal yet.
President Kaler from the university was just here. What do you have to say about his $209 million bonding request?
I think President Kaler is focusing on HEAPR, which generally is something our caucus is very interested in. We like ugly bonding bills that are roofs and pipes and floors and stuff like that. So it's a nice ugly number for HEAPR. So that portion of it we like. We're obviously very interested in a balanced bill. We also passed a $400 and some odd million bonding bill in the last session. That was very heavily weighted towards infrastructure and asset preservation, which we found favorable.
So is it safe to say that that number is sort of out there in terms of what is actually going to come, the $200 million?
Oh, we'll be looking at the bill in total and in size and shape and balance. So.
Senator Ortman, on the other three confirmations, do you expect them to be rocky at all? Or is it just Ellen Anderson at this point?
As far as I know, the only one that's in controversy right now is Ellen Anderson.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.